and I'm asking production to place the map again, please. Because so far, what we consider, or what is historically considered as the Northeast, okay, Maine, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, they all voted, a Democrat, and also the coast, the West Coast, Washington, Oregon, and California, they confirmed to be strongholds of the Democrats. So far, this is limited to a small amount of states, small amount of electoral votes, but the strongholds, the main core, the base of the amount and the turnout is done. And I think so far from now we are seeing stalls and rapid advances in the count because of this, as you were saying, Danny, these new ways of counting and these differences in timelines. But also, as we have been saying, the South has confirmed its position as well. And in any case, we are just waiting to see what the outcome is after these little counts here. And I wanted to point something regarding the Northeast, and is that those states, New York, Maine, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, as we were saying, those are the original conception of what we know as the United States. There was happening the American Revolution, the American experiment, and they have this duty, as we were saying at the beginning, this conception that they have to go Democrat and that they have to go to defend institutions. And precisely that is a difference in the discourse with Donald Trump, okay? He's anti-institution, he's anti-system, he's anti-establishment in his ways as incumbent, because being the president, he was, holding to all the legality he could, even though he was violating and breaching the status of his own government sometimes back in 2020 and during his term. But as we see, those states went blue, those states went with the Democrats and went with the institutionality. And also both coasts did the same. One because it's too traditional, and the other because it's too open to diversity, too open to immigrants, too open to academia, to plurality, to multi-voices. And I think we're seeing a map, and of course we also are conceiving and seeing the political and ideological spectrum in the US, because the Midwest is conservative, is rural, okay, and is predominantly white. And I'm not pointing at ethnicity here, but as we know, because of a majority, they have this ruling, and they have these ways to be more formal, more traditional in their politics and in their options. And that's the difference with the states that have been receiving with good hands, with open hands and arms, more immigration, as California or as New York, that is a city and a state that is composed in the core by Italian immigrants. The United States even has what they know as Irish in Rhode Island, the Italians in New Jersey. They have all this culture of immigration in both coasts that we cannot just obviate in this analysis and in this conception of the map. And as we were saying, it is quite a contrast from those states that receive immigrants, that receive plurality, that have an open-minded, but the so-called open-minded policies, if we contrast it with other states that also receive immigrants and also have a big or large black population. For example, I'm trying to call Texas in that case, Louisiana in that case. Those are states who have black culture, black tradition, but because of the share in the Electoral College, because of the lack of representation, because of the amount of population in the ratio with the representatives, they keep being silenced. They are keep being, put in the margins of the political decisions and, of course, in the voting and in the elections. That's the case of Florida, and that's the case, and I'm daring to say, Texas and Louisiana, which are states that have this plurality of cultures, but because of the political predominance and the the gaps in the system that gives advantage for an elite, they are voting this way. Because let's remember, the Electoral College is a winner-takes-it-all system. So we are not seeing the plurality of voices, we are not seeing the minorities, we are not seeing maybe the little lights, the little bulbs, lights in the darkness of the far right and the univoicing and the only way of thinking that we maybe perceive in this electoral map. And we have to say that it's the same in the other side, okay? Because we are not condemning or we are not saving one trend or the other or one party or the other. There are also black Trumpists. There are also Latin American people who live in there, Latin American descendants who are advocating for Trump and for the Republicans, and they live also in California. But because of this kind of system, the winner-takes-it-all system with the Electoral College, so those voices are kept silent and those decisions are kept in the ballot but not taken into account or not taken into the outcome of the election.
Exactly. And Gladys, I'm thinking about what you're saying, and of course there's so much to go into and to analyze, both taking into account the considerations you were bringing, also looking at the map that we have so far in terms of the states that have decided on a representation, at least to the point that this system allows it to. So definitely there's something to say about demographics. A lot of the analysis regarding this election usually focus on demographics and the way different communities tend to vote. And I think in such a plural community as the one living in the United States, it's something to always keep in mind. And also these trends have been changing. I think it's also important to always keep in mind how complex it is to think about demographics in terms of the different populations coming from different origins and their association or not with different parties, political parties in this sense. And I think it's always interesting. You mentioned it, Gladys, very well early on in this program, the question of intersectionality. But really, I think we need to look at the vote tendencies. Of course, this election, and we will analyze this in the coming days, the migration issue, both in terms of the migration as a concern prior to the elections, and also as the decision of migrants and the childs of migrants living in the United States and their decision to vote either way will have had a decisive factor in what we're looking at here today. And I think we need to think how that demographic and that origin of migrant voters intersects with their class position as well, and how that is affecting their alliances with either one of these parties, and how the rhetoric of both the Democrat and Republican Party is appealing to these different sectors, because of course we have a wide variety of different voters within what demographics sometimes tends us to group together, and a lot of these things are coinciding in the same way. So I think it's very rich to bring to the table. You were talking, Gladys, about the ethnical differences maybe in between the central region, the rural central region of the United States as opposed to the coasts, right? And of course that also coincides with what, Danny, you were mentioning some time ago, right now in this long night, the economic differences of what has been described in the previous Trump campaign as the prosperous coasts and the forgotten rural central region. So those things have intersections. Those things are coinciding or not coinciding depending on the case, and that is a factor to keep in mind when we think about, for example, how has migration as a topic affected or impacted the vote? How has the Latino population decided to place its alliance, and what are the factors leading and appealing to that vote? Because one may of course be being appealed by a rhetoric that is not criminalizing that sector of society, but also there may be a lot thinking about, for example, the appeals to the working class that Republicans have been doing.
Yeah, this is what is called in the mainstream media the cultural wars. The cultural wars. And this brings up all types of contradictory, nuanced, or dialectical differences that are at play and that are dynamic. For example, in Georgia, there was a study that 1 out of 4 black men in Georgia intended to vote for Trump. And of course, it would be very easy from the liberal perspective to say, well, how could you ever vote for Trump? And then Latino voters, with all of Trump's scapegoating and xenophobia, it would appear absolutely ridiculous that a Latino, a Mexican, a Chicano, a Mexican-American would vote for Trump. But many Latino men identify much more with Trump than they do with Tim Walz and with Kamala Harris for a wide assortment of reasons. The LA Times ran a very interesting article the other day called Cholos for Trump. Cholos, this is not the easiest term to define, but Cholos is an aesthetic or a style at the risk of a gross oversimplification. I guess Cholos would be identified as a type of urban Mexican American with gang connotations, and they have a whole podcast where they're saying we absolutely identify with Trump because of Trump's values. And again, it goes back to the same thing with the cultural wars. And imagine trying to divide us over whether we think that biologically born males should use a women's restroom because they now identify as transgendered. How does that become the most important issue? These are just ways to divide Americans. Every human being deserves respect, and every child and every woman deserves to be safe. So I think that's part of a very divisive agenda that distracts us from the underlying class issues. So when Trump arrives and critiques all of these cultural issues, it plays into his hands because he appears to be the one super focused on the economy. There's another important concept as the votes continue to trickle in and are counted, the concept of profilicity. Profilicity is the opposite of authenticity. It's the opposite of sincerity. It is a sociological concept because nowadays we live in the age of profiles. It's not what I do in real life in the streets of the Bronx or Brockton, Massachusetts, where I grew up. It's what my profile on Instagram, my profile on X, if I still have a profile on X, because this billionaire-in-chief Elon Musk puts his material at the very top for tens of millions of people to see. They did a study that Elon Musk has now reached some 2 billion people with his recent tweets, at the same time that he censors and shadow bans and delists and deboosts the rest of us. The profilicity, someone like Kamala Harris can project herself to be all these different things, but when you actually look at her concretely as vice president, can anyone point to any actual concrete accomplishment that she made? So her entire campaign, again, is Trump bashing and Trump bashing. That's not to say what has Trump actually accomplished. I think it goes both ways, but this idea of profilicity is mighty dangerous. We should be judging people not just by their words, but in this social media era, it's very easy to hide behind one's profile, and we really don't know what's at the core of behind the profile. So again, it comes down to this theme that I think looms large in this election of appearance versus reality.
Exactly. So we are now joined